Hello, everybody, and welcome to the HTML All the Things podcast, episode number 55, Top 10 Tips for Beginner Web Developers. I'm your host, Matt Lawrence, and I'm joined again by my co-host, Mike Coran. If you've been enjoying the podcast so far and you want to support us, there are a couple ways that you can do that. You can review us on Apple Podcasts or on the podcast platform that you listen to this on. You can also check us out on Patreon. We only have 2 tiers right now, but the $3 tier will give you a shout out on the podcast, and we will share your website link in the show notes. And probably the most important one is just to share this podcast with your friends. Let your developer friends and other people who are interested in web development that we are here and around. And they can also come and hang out in our Discord server, which has finally launched. It's been launched for a while now and is actually really growing rather quickly. It's pretty active in there. People are getting a bunch of help and helping others and all that crazy stuff, as comes with the community vibe. I was going to trail off to a better slogan than that, but the community vibe is now coined by me. So there you go. So I'm going to pass it on to Mike now for the weekly pain point. Mike, take it away.
All right. So weekly pain point this week was cross-platform development. Just having some issues because we've always used kind of an HTML5 web app approach, do it, Cordovaize it, PWA, whatever system works, so that we have one code base to work on. And this is when I'm talking about like with one of our major clients. But lately there's been some issues with some performance. So one of our applications is really media heavy, and it also has camera functionality. And the camera functionality, if you use HTML5, the quality isn't very good. So we're trying to figure out a different approach, something that's cross-platform, but at least can give us a good performance boost in camera and also performance boost in many other things. So the things I'm looking at are like React Native, Vue Native, NativeScript, and Flutter. And I'm seeing if I want to do kind of a HTML5 base and just add plugins and launch those plugins with intents on both iOS and Android, but I'm not sure yet. I don't know how I'm going to approach it. Hopefully it's not too complicated, but it's something that I've definitely been kind of thinking about for a really long time. Now I finally have to put it into fruition and hopefully get something going by next week. What about you, Matt?
So this week has been a bit of a communication week for me, and within that, we had a bit of a breakdown in communication, very specifically with layman terms versus technical terms. So we kind of had a situation in which we were kind of throwing around terms in a meeting, and it ended up being that some technical terms were used by a person who's not technical. So then we got some like weird feedback, and then we got all confused, and we didn't know what to do, and they didn't know what we were supposed to have, and it was like this whole thing. So we ended up figuring it out, of course, but that's sort of my weekly pain point because it's something that can come up really easily, and it's something that a lot of people should pay attention to because as you use technical terms, even when you're talking to like a regular person, as you use technical terms, the people who are non-technical may start using those terms and not use them correctly. And so that might start a bit of a whirlwind where you're like, now what are we doing? So, which is literally what I asked at the end of the conversation. So just a bit of a shout out there, just in case you guys need to prepare for that. And I've lost my place completely, so I'm just going to trail off instead of having dead air, as entertaining as this is. Anyway, this episode we have, is this actually supposed to be here, Mike?
No.
This is not supposed to be here. Well, we're going to keep this in the episode then. My weekly pain point is Mike leaving a link in the show notes where I, for some reason, thought I was in the wrong document there for a moment, and I was like, wait a second, did I somehow open up something else at Google Drive? And I started to panic while talking.
I saw Matt's shocked face right there.
That was like, what the fuck is going on? Okay, anyway, this week we're doing tips. So Mike has a group of 5. I have a group of 5, hence the top 10. And we're just going to kind of go back and forth, go through them. So Mike's going to kick it off. So take it away.
All right. And I think what we want to do with this is, like, we've been asked many times kind of what's your advice for a beginner web developer? And we've, throughout all of our podcast episodes, we've probably talked about a lot of these tips, but now we're kind of going into a condensed form. Hopefully someone that's just getting in will just listen to this episode as a starting point. Obviously, this isn't the be all end all of their journey, but it's a good little tidbits of information, I believe, for them to give them a good start and to get their mind in the right place for learning web development. That's kind of what I want to do with this episode. So to start off, something that we've talked about many, many times, start from the basics. And what I mean by that is go with the standard HTML, CSS, JavaScript approach for the front end development. If you're looking at web development as a career path, or if you're looking at web development as a way to go into like the web development industry, I think knowing the base concepts, the base programming concepts of those three languages is where anyone should start. And you can do that many different ways. You can look at videos, you can look at courses and stuff like that. But I'm not going to be talking about exactly how to learn those three, because everyone's kind of a different learner. And I am working on not a curriculum, but an advice episode where I'm going to be going through, if you're this kind of learner, this is the way you should start. If you're this kind of learner, this is the way you should start. That'll go into more depth on that. But for now, just know that try not to be confused by all the different, frameworks out there, all the different technologies that are built on top of these three very key parts of web development. Learn only these three parts first.
And the thing too with people, I find that they're oftentimes they will kind of pigeonhole themselves into learning something specific, like they'll go to learn WordPress, or they'll go learn another CMS or another sort of language or a framework. And it's really important, I think, to drive this point home that the basics, HTML, CSS, and JS, can do exactly what those frameworks advertise. So maybe not in the same method, like maybe it will be quite a lot more involved, but at the end of the day, the browsers only understand HTML, CSS, and JS. And so as a result, you really have to this is kind of the baseline. This is where you should be starting. And yes, if you're doing something where something really easy I'm trying to think off the top of my head is an AJAX call. Well, an AJAX call is more involved in JS, but it can be done, but it's way easier in something like jQuery. So people might go, oh, I'll just learn jQuery, but at the same time, it's like, no, like you should learn the basics, because then when you have that basic base, then you can just go and kind of pick and choose what framework you want, which you kind of can do when you learn a framework immediately. But the problem is these ones, HTML, CSS, and JS, are probably going to be the least likely to go away if they ever do. Whereas something like, jQuery is not going to die tomorrow, but let's say it could die in 5 years. It could die in a year. Like, we don't know, right? So you never know with that type of stuff. So these are the base languages, and these are definitely something that you should be learning right from the get-go. So my first tip here is going to be, when brainstorming, don't shoot down bad UI ideas entirely. They're a part of the process, and the design will get better. So one of the things I do when we're first starting is, I'm not exactly an illustrator, or I'm just straight up not an illustrator, but I will kind of jot down a wireframe on paper really quick. So I have like a book just literally filled with wireframes that are all in different orders, and it's just a messy book. But what the point is that I have a lot of good, a lot of bad, a lot of mediocre ideas in there. And so I'll have ideas where, let's say I have a website where the whole design is hinged around the fact that there's a vertical nav bar along the left side. All of a sudden I'll think like, oh, that's a cool idea for a nav bar, but it's a horizontal one. I'll still jot down that horizontal nav bar, because maybe I'll steal something from it, like the logo or the layout of the links or something like that. Or maybe that will like spawn a couple other ideas. And so it is like very much a part of that design process where you want to see, because you kind of have to like see to believe UX sometimes, where you're thinking like, oh, it'd be really awesome to keep that left sidebar, but now that I've drawn this horizontal one, well, the links are always there because it's a static one, or however you are doing it. So you're like, oh, now people could constantly navigate and they don't have to always pull out that side menu. That's interesting. Maybe I need to kind of do an evaluation and see, hey, maybe this is going to be easier for the user.
Yeah, and I think another really good point with that is like, don't shoot down bad ideas in general right away. And as you said, you have like a nice notebook in there, and it's not organized, but it has a bunch of stuff in it. It's kind of like napkin engineering. So when you go into like a coffee shop or something and you think of something, you write it down on a napkin. This is just kind of a theoretical approach to it. But those kinds of ideas can actually work into something more important in the future. And just because it was done hastily, and just because it doesn't have much thought through it, doesn't mean it's a bad idea, especially in different contexts. So you could have an idea about something that just doesn't work, right? Like just doesn't work. But then in the future, like, couple months down the line, you have another project that you're working on, you go back and you're like, oh man, this idea actually does work in this project. And that can happen many, many times. So I think another thing and another piggyback onto your approach is that whole notebook idea, is keep the bad idea design notebook in quotes with you throughout your journey, and make sure that you can always kind of go back and reference how you've evolved as an engineer, and maybe use those older thought process to benefit your newer approach to engineering. So I think it's kind of a cool take on that. But with my second point here, I'm going to go with focus more on personal projects than on online courses. And with that, I'm talking about not ditching online courses in general or not ditching traditional education in general. I'm saying have a greater focus on personal projects. I see a lot where people will kind of get too focused in on these like free code camp courses or like the paid ones, or go to Udacity, and like they're really worried about which course to pick because they think that if they pick the wrong course, it's going to be a waste of time. In my opinion, like there's plenty of courses. They're all rated. Like there's some really good courses out there. But it's going to be very tough to motivate yourself unless you're that kind of learner to continue through these courses, because they are kind of an educational slog, because you're going through like, paid like PowerPoint presentations and like a bunch of different code that you have never seen before. It's a much better approach, in my opinion, to have something that you want to work on, whether it be kind of like a side project that you think will generate an income at some point, or just a side project that you're interested in, like you take the API of all the Pokemon and you want to create a Pokemon database for yourself to use when you're out and like playing Pokemon Go or something, whatever. Like it could be any sort of idea that you have. And with that idea, you start to kind of be like, okay, so if I want to do that, I would have to learn how to display it on a screen. So then you learn how to do HTML, CSS, and maybe have some dummy information in there. And then you're like, well, I need to bring in some data. So you need to learn how to do a fetch request and interact with APIs. And that'll lead you not only to the right courses for you to take, but it'll lead you to a more desired learning, more focused learning approach where you're going to be motivated. And that's the biggest part of this. Like, it's really, really hard to stay motivated as you're learning something, especially if you're not in that career at that certain time. If you can't devote 100% to web development, which I've noticed a lot of people can't, like they have their own careers, they have families to keep, to get money on the table. They have different careers already, and they're looking to like go into web development. It's really hard to motivate yourself by just going into courses without having a personal project, maybe even your own personal site to work on. So really big advice on my part: find that personal project for you, and then base your online courses around that personal project. And I think you're going to learn a lot more, and you're going to kind of retain that information a lot better because you're going to be putting it into use right away.
And that kind of lends itself actually to a question that was asked in the Discord this week, which was like, when can we start learning web development, or when can you start making money, from web development? And with that being said, like when you focus on those personal projects, you learn certain things. Like Mike mentioned the Pokemon API call. You could learn other things as well. Like maybe you want to just learn how to make a light box because you want to display your own photos, that type of thing. And what I was suggesting in the Discord was, and I'm paraphrasing everything here, but what I was suggesting is like you kind of go into, if you're looking to go into freelancing, go into a freelancer website of some sort and take a look at the jobs there. And you will actually, if you've done these personal projects, be able to match things up. Like maybe it won't be Pokemon, but maybe there's some sort of flower database for a greenhouse. And so you're like, oh, wait, it's not Pokemon, but I could definitely pull the names and the photos of those flowers because the API. So you'll kind of like check those things off, and you'll actually, as you learn more and more and more and more skills and read more and more freelancer, requests essentially from people who want to pay you or want to pay a freelancer, you'll actually learn, first of all, what to learn, and you'll actually also see a payoff there, because you're like, hey, I did this personal project, but now it could actually lead to a paid project or more than one paid project. And so it's kind of a big motivator for you in that way as well. So my second tip is going to be, don't be afraid to iterate. Your first design will be worse than your future ones. So one of the things that I always seem to do when I put together a UI is, I'm not like the best designer out there. I haven't been like conventionally trained in design and that type of thing. However, I do pay a good amount of attention to UIs and UX of other products. So that's why I'm kind of like the UI UX guy. And so one of the things that will happen to me is I'll put together a site, and if it's hastily done, if it's hastily done and it needs to be hastily done for the customer, oftentimes we've even gotten feedback where it's like, this looks kind of rushed. And that's because that's the first iteration. That's the really quick bang, here it is out. When a customer gives you that long-term sort of time to iterate, you will actually come up with a better and better and better design. So there'll be times where I'll put together everything kind of hastily, And then I'll say like, okay, everything works now. I got a nav bar, I got my content, I got my photos working, my light boxes, my slideshows, whatever I have all of these working now. But now that they're working, I need it to be actually functional. I need it to be more than functional. I need it to look nice. And so I can actually spend like an entire afternoon just sort of tuning that nav bar. And that's what's missed in hastily done projects. So don't be afraid to iterate after you sort of get your function done, or if you're just trying to get into design and you just want to kind of sketch up the stuff, just remember, like, your first ideas or your first group of ideas when you throw together your wireframe or when you throw together your prototype will be worse than future iterations. Sure, you might have a bad iteration in the future where you're like, I'm going to radically change this and change how links work or something crazy, and it doesn't end up working out. But now you know, hey, that's bad. I'm not going to do that again. But now I know that people do this with their links, and so you could maybe your next iteration might be even better than that. So I'm not sure how much Mike has seen my process in terms of like Webflow, but Webflow is a prime example of this, where I will have like a really kind of it looks hastily done. Like, it looks like a first draft. There's weird like colors and stuff because I'm just trying to see where divs end, and it's like all over the place. But then slowly as I go through, I'll be renaming the classes to nice things, and I'll be going through and moving the stuff around and, checking the responsivity more than it is. And slowly but surely it gets better and better and better. So with that being said, just a little tack onto this is, if your customer is willing to give you extra time and you're doing a fair bit of design work, UI, UX in my case, take that extra time and just make it better, because the customer will notice like, hey, this looks like it's very, very quickly done.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And it's actually a big thing in web development and web design to iterate. So iteration is used in many things, and even in deployment and development in larger teams, right? A lot of the time, I believe it's the Scrum method, where you kind of get your first MVP out as quickly as possible, and then you iterate on top of that, because the value of the user input when you have something out there is extremely important and extremely useful. Because if you get something out there, let's say you spend 2 months doing something, and it's a crazy amount of time for you to kind of get it done, and you've put all of your effort into it. It looks really polished, really well thought out, and you put it out there and people hate it right away. Well, that's going to be almost waste of time, because now you have to go back and change a bunch of things that you've polished already. Whereas if you kind of go through a project and you get something out there that's working and it looks decent, but you know its flaws, you know that it has limitations and stuff like that, but you get it out there for customers to start using in an alpha or something like that, or even an internal use program, like so that people can start at least testing and giving you feedback, and they tell you that advice after 2 weeks instead of 2 months, you can go a different direction right away. So the iteration process, don't be afraid to iterate, is really important. And don't be afraid to like get something out there as faster rather than slower is also an important thing. Don't go crazy with it. Like, you don't cut corners on everything that you see, but don't go for perfection is what I'm saying. Try to build on the things that you're making, instead of making the perfect, Mona Lisa from the very start. So that was a good point, Matt. My third point here is work on your social skills. So with that, when you're first starting out, a big portion of how you're going to get clients is going to be networking. It's going to meetups. It's going to conventions, stuff like that. It's going to be interacting with other people, whether that be online. Some people like prefer it online through email. Whether that be going to actually physical meetings and sitting there and talking to your neighbors and giving out business cards, talking to people. It's going to work differently for everyone, because everyone is different on the spectrum of like, do they want to go, like, how much time they could spend with people, how much time how they like interact with other people in a large audiences and stuff like that. But try to push yourself as much as you possibly can. And this is something that we didn't do a lot of, Matt, I think. But I think when we did do it, it did kind of pay off. Not only in the ways of getting connections, maybe, but in the ways of just making us better presenters and better, like, understanding the industry a little more. Because a big thing that you do when you're a solo developer as well is you kind of get into this trap of like, well, I don't know anything about development. I don't know what the industry is like. Everyone knows way more than me. Again, that imposter syndrome that we like to talk about sinks in. You got to get out of that. And to get out of that, you got to talk to other people. So again, I'm not plugging the web development community like the Discord, but that's not a bad place to start. That's not a bad place to go in. Like, join a Discord community, a web development Discord community. We have one. There's plenty of other ones out there that you can join as well. And start talking to people. Put your profile on there. People will give feedback, and you'll kind of get a sense to where you are and where you need to be. Because there's going to be a lot of different like stages of people. For people that are just starting out that don't know what HTML, CSS, and JS are. Maybe they're just they're just looking into the industry. They don't even know what programming is in general. And then there's going to be the people that are just starting out, where they're going to be like in a stage where they're actually coding stuff. And then there's people on top of that, etc., etc. And you're never going to know that unless you actually start putting yourself out there and going to social events, joining social activities, joining groups. Like if it's online, like I said, everyone's different, but if it were me, like I would probably try to go to a couple meetups, because it's always nice to get that person to person communication. It's going to help you in the future as well, because when you have to quote, when you have to talk to customers, it's going to usually be they're going to prefer a call, or they're going to prefer an in-person meeting, and you want to develop those skills as early as possible.
And that's a really good point, because that's actually, I mean, it's kind of come up more recently as well. Excuse me. It's kind of come up more recently as well, is because, or one thing I want to mention about this. What am I trying to say here? One thing I wanted to mention about this topic that has come up recently as well. Jesus, get your thesaurus out for that one. Has been that I used to do like a fair bit of meetings and a fair bit of talking to people and that type of thing. And then I kind of went back into like the shadow realm to make it nerdy. And like, I kind of haven't really talked to many customers, saving a few phone calls here and there, of course. But then more recently, I've started to run some meetings. And the reason why I mentioned this is because I used to have like really, really, really great meeting skills, and like meeting skills are fine. Like I'm not like telling the customer off or anything. And like, we're getting the point across, but I will say that I am rusty at it. And so it's one of those things where it's like, if you spend this time investing and actually get your skills up, they will, like, just like anything else, you will go out of practice and you will lose that. So one thing, for example, is really weird, but one thing I do, for example, before I do the podcast is I actually just like talk to myself about stuff that I'm reading and stuff like that. So I kind of like I'll like correct myself where I'm using too many ums and too many likes and that type of thing. I try to constantly correct myself when I'm talking to myself. Now that might sound crazy, but that's one way to do it for if you're trying to use that type of social skill. When it comes to meetings, like Mike said, you have to go to meetups, that type of thing. You have to exercise those skills, because they will go out of practice and you will lose those skills, or at least become rusty at them over time. So my third skill here that I'm going to, or my third tip, is going to be don't worry about designing mobile first or desktop first. Just plan your responsivity. And one of these, and this point right here is going to probably get me some flack, because people are going to say you should be designing mobile first, or it was years ago that we designed desktop first and blah 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 blah. Well, in my opinion, the reason why it went from desktop first and was because we were on desktops, and then it moved a few years ago to mobile first, because but 50-50 web traffic, or even more these days, is on mobile. And so people are like, well, you should be designing a mobile first. But the reason why, and I think, and this is my opinion, is because on older mobile sites, you used to get a limited feature set. Sometimes I'd go in there and be like, well, can I do that from the mobile site? So, like, or can I do that on the mobile site? I can do it on the desktop. What's the thing? Because they're cutting stuff out. And I think that was because it was an afterthought. In my opinion, people stress out too much on the fact that you're trying to do mobile first for desktop, and they're worrying about scaling. So I see sometimes people will, I say panic, but it's not like, full out, like everyone's freaking out, but it's like they're worried, like, oh my God, like how am I supposed to make these little blocks in my photo gallery, expand and look nice on a desktop? Like, I don't know what to do. If you're more comfortable with designing the desktop version first, in my opinion, you do that first. If you like doing mobile first and that's the way you're trained, go ahead. If you want to do tablet first, or you want to just start sketching out something that is sort of not like it doesn't matter what the size is, and you just start sketching something out, and then you figure out how it's going to be responsive and what screen sizes those divs are going to go in and what size they are and that type of thing, and pixel ratios and the whole bit. You want to figure all that stuff out later? Fine. In my opinion, as long as both the sites are functional and you've planned out your responsivity such that you're able to say, okay, on the small screen, we need to ensure that stuff isn't cut off. We need to ensure that all the settings are there. We need to ensure all the pages are there. We need to ensure that anything that someone would want to do on a phone is there, and any functionality that should be cut from a phone should be cut. And the same goes to desktop. Maybe there's stuff on a phone that you won't want to do on a desktop, and then cut that. In my opinion, I wouldn't stress out about doing, oh, I need to because it's industry standard, plan for mobile first. No one's going to know at the end of the day whether you plan for mobile first. As long as you planned out your responsivity and ensured, like, hey, when I make my desktop site, I need to ensure that it's good for a mouse, it's okay for a touchscreen, blah, 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 all your basic stuff. And then when it's on a phone, I need to make sure it's functional. I can see everything. It's not too small, it's not too big, and it's not being cut off because the screen is smaller now. So I know I'm going to catch some flack for that, but that's my opinion because I've had that question posed to me in the Discord, I think a couple of times now, or maybe it's just from regular people, I can't remember, but I know that's been asked for me, and I always say, like, I don't worry about my mobile first because I know it's just going to be fully featured. And so when I use it on a phone, if I hate it, I'm just going to fix it. I'm not going to be like, man, now that I've changed it on a phone, I have to change my desktop layout. It ain't going to happen.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think a lot of people get caught up on deciding which one to do first, and like they start looking at statistics of like how many people use phones and how many. It's a really tough thing to like quantify, in my opinion. I think it's one of those things that you just have to do what you're comfortable with. And like Matt said, as long as you make both of them fully accessible and fully functional, then there's no worry. If you've always designed something desktop first, and then you've done the responsivity based on that, then that's like, there's nothing wrong with you keep going that way. So I completely agree with you, Matt. If you've done the opposite way, maybe you're like someone that's come up with the mobile trend and you've only designed mobile apps first and then done responsivity for large screens, that's okay too, as long as it works, as long as everything's accessible on both. Like, everyone's different. For me personally, I personally like to do a lot of the major like stuff like ordering something online or filling out a form. I like to do it on the computer. I like to use a keyboard. I like to use a mouse. That's what I like to do. I know I know a lot of people will do that completely fine on the phone, and I sometimes order stuff on the phone as well. But most of the time, if I have access to it, I'll do it on the desktop, big screen. The thing that I like to do is go from mobile and then kind of take a look, make sure that it's not janky. That's my biggest thing. So if I'm doing desktop first and I go to mobile and it's janky in any way and it makes me not want to use that site and just turn it off, then it's kind of an issue for me. But that's different. Like, that's just responsivity in general. So I agree with you there for sure, Matt. The next thing I kind of want to point out is learn Git/version control right from the beginning. And this is my fourth tip. So the big thing here is that Matt and I, we didn't do this, and this is like one of those things where learn from our mistakes. It's not a huge thing. It's not a huge mistake, I don't think, but it kind of did hinder us a little bit during the process of first starting out. So we had an issue with, and we've talked about this on the podcast before, we had an issue with OneDrive syncing issues where we were both working on the same file at the same time. It created the same file a bunch of times and we didn't know what was going on. That's just the nature of OneDrive. That's the nature of cloud storage, and that's completely fine. That's how cloud storage should work. What we should have done is we should have right away, as we were started learning web development, just kind of thrown Git on, at least learn the basics of Git as we were learning the basics of HTML, CSS, JS websites, because having it being the same second nature is a huge advantage for many, many different reasons. One, for obviously backup and version control. Version control is a very, very important process for any sort of programming in general, because it allows you to go back to a version that could have been working for you. It allows you to compare code. So like, let's say right now you write something like a feature, like a camera plugin, and then it works just fine. Everything works, and you plug it into your application. Everything works fine. In like 3 weeks, a random user finds a random issue with the maybe not the camera plugin, but with something else in the application. You go back and you look at when you added that camera plugin, and you see that, I added this, and you look at the feature that the person's talking about. These two things conflict. you can do that with version control because you can go back to your version without the camera plugin and see how it worked before that. So it's a huge, huge advantage of version control. And I think it's important to kind of understand it from the basics. Maybe not like fully delve into all the different merge tactics and stuff like that, but at least understand how to do the basic commit, push, pull method. And kind of go from there. Just a good little bit of structure. Another base skill, in my opinion, kind of like my first point was start with the basics. I feel like this kind of should be grouped in with the basics at this point.
Yeah, and that's very true too, because like we were trying to make our own version control with OneDrive, as we've stated on the show a few times now, and so like clearly version control was needed. We have like some old websites that are still on that sort of older version control, and it's just a bit of a mess there now. It's easy enough to use, but it's still like, why are we inventing our own file structure to do version control when we're supposed to be using an industry standard essentially? And I know we will talk about us not using an industry standard for some skills and some programs, but at the end of the day, it's like sometimes you do need to jump on that bandwagon and say, okay, I need version control. What am I doing here? Like, why am I resisting this? And this is definitely one of those cases that we definitely should have done right from the get-go. And it's definitely really useful. And on top of that, it actually lends itself to talking about, when you were talking about, Mike, about the social skills and that, because some people will say, I want to go and I want to submit like a change to like an open source repo. And so they're not getting like the face-to-face social aspect, but they're kind of getting the e-meeting people where they're figuring out how to, push or add like PR requests and how to figure out how to like dive into an application that a bunch of people have made. And so they're kind of getting that social and like a bit of the social with the version control, but it's also a fair bit of experience with the coding as well. So it's kind of a do-all other than the meet in person. So it's kind of something that maybe you can keep in mind for if you're looking to get into Git. So my fourth tip now is going to be try out different programs. So that includes IDEs, which are the development environments like VS Code and that type of thing, as well as different wireframing software, etc. So a bunch of people will try to choose something based on the price, which I mean is fair. If you're on a budget, that's fine. However, sometimes you need to take a look at the different features. You need to say, okay, I've been using X program. It's a real pain. I don't like how it doesn't do this. And this other program does do this. It's going to save me some time. It's a little bit more money for this other one. The heck with it. I'm doing the other one. There's a bunch of free trials out there. Sometimes there's like a free tier. So like, do not be afraid to try out different programs. A prime example would be, we went from Asana to, well, we still use Asana, but we went from Asana to, I didn't really use it too much. And so I started using Trello, and I use Trello a lot now, almost daily. However, with that being said, I still use Asana now because I use Asana for just our straight up task management. And then I use Trello for sort of keeping information together, and I don't really like it for task management. And I would never have figured that out if I wasn't willing to try out different programs, because a lot of people do use Trello for their task management, and it would be one of those things where I would be like, no, I can't try Trello. Like, some people would do that, right? I can't try Trello because I'm on Asana. And really, you should be kind of open to trying out different things, because if you are also, as an aside, if you're a UI UX developer, you should be trying out these other programs, because any program you use should give you some ideas on where you should put buttons and how you should use things and how things are laid out. And like I said, I like the UX on Trello for kind of storing my data and keeping some stuff, keeping tabs on where everything is in a project, whereas I prefer Asana just to literally track my day-to-day, like, oh, I have to call this guy to do this thing to his website, his nav bar. Maybe I just need to quote him something, whatever. And so that's sort of where I'm at there. Same with IDEs as well, just to bring it into that. So for Visual Studio Code, I was really against that for a while, but I went into it and I do enjoy it. I was using Notepad++ for a long time, and on top of that, I think you were using Mike Brackets for a long time, and you tried to get me into that. I tried it for a bit, and I was just like, okay, I'm out of here. I don't want to use this, so I'm just going back to Notepad++. But lately, it's been VS Code for me, and actually even more lately, it's been mostly just business programs for me. But business and like wireframing and prototyping programs for me. But again, I wouldn't have known about VS Code, or I wouldn't have cared about it if I hadn't have tried it. So it's one of those things where you really should try it, and I was one of the people that did not want to do it, and I did, and I now think of it as not a vital skill, but something you should be doing is definitely try new things out to see if you like them.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm all for that. Obviously, I've always been trying to get Matt to try all the different programs. But I think one good thing that comes out of that is like Matt said with brackets. Like he tried brackets, he was willing to do that, and then he didn't like it. And I think it's important to note that say no to some stuff as well. So don't say no without maybe researching it a little bit. But as soon as you see it, like maybe you're a JetBrains person, or maybe you use a different IDE and you've really liked it for many years and you've heard everyone talk about VS Code and how awesome it is, and you go and try it and you just see the problems with it right away. Don't be afraid to be like, okay, well, I'm going to still use my original IDE even though everyone's using this one because of A, B, and C. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where like sometimes people get caught into the wave too much. So if, VS Code is super popular, you have to use VS Code. Or if brackets is super popular, you have to use brackets. Trello, stuff like that. It's important to kind of know your own preferences and say no sometimes as well. So say no, get your perfect workflow for you, because everyone is different. With that, I'm going to do my last tip here. And it's kind of a catch-all. It's a don't be afraid to fail. And this is a big one in my eyes, and it's kind of how I've tried to adapt my life a little bit. I know before, like, let's say high school time for me, which was quite a while ago, I really didn't want to get bad marks. I really didn't want to do that. So I kind of gave the amount of effort that I could give to get normal everything. I was just average. I didn't want to do too much and then fail, because that would seem like I'm an idiot, right? But I think that that's a terrible way to look at it. I think it's important to know that put as much effort as you can into something. If you fail, that's nothing bad. There's nothing bad with failing. The stigma around failing should be kind of taken away as much as possible. Obviously, it still sucks. You've invested time, something didn't go your way, but take as much as you can out of that experience and then do it again and then fail again and then do it again and fail again. Like, we don't know when we're going to succeed. We don't know what's going to succeed. And the different levels of success and failure are also like infinite, essentially. Like, our podcast is doing what we think is great, right? Like, Matt and I are enjoying it. We're building a great developer community. Everything's awesome. For some other people, this might be a failure. I don't know. But it's one of those things that, like, if you don't do it and if you don't put as much effort as you can at that turn time into it, then you don't know what it could have been, and you don't know what it could be. So it's important to not be afraid to fail. It's like, don't go out there and try to fail. Don't go out there and start a project don't go out there and start a social networking application with half a year of experience into like web development and think that it's going to succeed. I wouldn't recommend that. Right. But if you're going out there as a way of learning how the social networking platform works, that's a different thing. Right. Like, if you're going out there and it's your side project to learn how community, like, sockets works, how, real-time chat works, how user management works, that's a totally different thing. You're not going out there to try to make $1 billion in the first year of your career. Like, that's not the right way to look at things. And then it's also not the right way to skew your failure. Right. Because if your head mindset is like, I need to earn $1 billion or $1 million or $100,000 in the first month of my web development experience, then you're setting yourself up for it's not maintainable failure. It's one of those things where you're going to go out there, you're going to learn that the cost for getting users is extremely high and extremely difficult. It could apply to any other project as well. And you're going to burn out quickly, and you're going to be like, well, screw this. I'm never going to do this again, because I just, invested so much of my time into it, and the stakes were so high. I needed that $100,000. Otherwise, I guess I'm bankrupt, and that's it. So try to manage yourself where you're getting something out of everything that you're doing, and don't be afraid to, like, go into something with a potential chance of it failing. There's nothing wrong with that. And I think it's a big point in not only web development, but I think most other careers out there, to kind of push yourself to be a better person and a better skilled individual, I guess, in your career path.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I'm going to say something controversial. So everyone get your pitchforks in hand and at the ready. So Donald Trump said it best. No, I'm kidding. Okay, everyone calm down. Everyone calm down. That's a joke. That's a joke. Everyone calm down. But still have the pitchfork in your hand, because you might disagree with me here. So I think that one of the big things, and I think we may have mentioned it on the show before, is that Mike was mentioning courses, and then, like, obviously we went to a traditional school. And I would actually say that traditional schools train us to hate failure. And they do that because when can you fail there without being held back a year? Or when can you fail there without losing money if you're paying tuition for like a post-secondary sort of program? When can you fail there without having a consequence in a learning environment? And I think that that's one of the things, like I know you mentioned high school, that's a prime example where it's like, well, you're still losing all these marks. It's like, well, now my overall grade's going down because I failed at this. And people might be like, well, then just don't screw up. It's like, well, okay, thank you for that. But like, I didn't know what was going on. It's my first time doing it or whatever. So I don't know. I 100% agree with you. And this is sort of why I think you and I always seem to suggest like, just try your own project. Do your own thing. Try to teach yourself how to do it. Get mad at yourself when you make a mistake on your own project and use that, anger or, discontent to say, the heck with this. I have to figure out how to fix this. This database is all screwed up. I'm never doing a database like this again. Whatever your situation is. I think that, and I don't know whether you agree with this, Mike, but I think that in terms of schools, if you like screw up like your homework, sometimes your homework is marked and it's like, well, it was the first time I was doing it like last night. And now my homework got marked and I'm screwed. And I understand that people are like, well, boohoo, your homework got screwed over. But what it does is it creates a culture of people of being afraid to screw things up, in my opinion. It creates a culture of people being like, oh my God, if I don't understand this right now, like it creates that freezing culture, like people will like freeze. And like start to panic. It creates that culture because they're afraid to mess it up. Like a good example is we were given a bunch of electrical components for our like lab classes, and sometimes we'd be given one of it. So it's like, well, use it perfectly and use it perfectly at all times. If you don't, you're going to break it, and then you're going to have to possibly wait a heck of a long time or order it yourself to get a replacement. And in the rare case that, let's say the school can't provide you with another one, you might just be screwed. And you may have to order another one and wait like a significant amount of time in the shipping. You know what I mean? Now, like they were lenient and stuff like that. Like they did provide parts and that type of thing. I'm not trying to like talk down the school for that type of thing. But what I'm saying is that I don't know where the middle ground is in that. Where is the line? It's like the school doesn't want to provide you with 8 of this electrical component so you can mess up 7 times and then get it right the 8th time. But at the same time, providing you with 1 is like, you know what I'm trying to say? Like, it's not like super, super stressful. And when I say electrical components, these are like 5, 10, 15, sometimes 20-cent chips that we were using, like little ICs, integrated circuits. But it's still like a thing where it's like, great, now I'm screwed for this class now. Like the class you're in, I guess I'm screwed now. And what if it was like a big one? Like, what if it's like the formal lab, as they used to call it? And now you're kind of screwed. So I don't know. Maybe it's maybe I'm against that whole thing where it's just like, well, do better. Well, thank you for that. That really helped me out. But that's my 2 cents on there. And so to go back to my tips, which are going to be a little bit happier than that, is going to be a browse around for UI, UX / design ideas from existing sites, even in different markets than yours. And so what I mean by that is if you're doing a tech blog and you are really stumped, like you're trying to lay out the UI, the UX, and you're trying to figure out what the heck's going on, don't be afraid to look at other people, because I know that some people are afraid of, excuse me, I'm dying today. I know that some people are really afraid of ripping people off, but you can really tell when someone's ripped somebody else off. Like today I saw on Twitter, somebody was like, some guy just ripped off my site. And I was like, oh yeah, here we go. It's going to be like his sliders slightly the same. No. His animations, everything except for the color scheme was identical. Typography, layout, the way it was responsive, everything. It was like a total blatant ripoff. And so I thought to myself when I saw that, like, wow, like it's really obvious to tell when you rip somebody off. But if you use somebody's design concepts, within reason as an inspiration only, you can really kind of break through some of those technical blocks. It's almost like a writer's block. You can break through some of those design blocks and kind of just rip through it. And you'd be like, wow, I didn't realize that a vertical nav bar could be laid out this way. I'm going to do something similar so I can fit more information in there or something like that. And when I say, even if it's in different markets, if you're doing a tech blog, don't just look at tech blogs. You might want to look at other things. I don't know, grocery store websites, flyers, websites, anything. And just get a big group of ideas together when you're sketching it out or when you're doing it on the computer, when you're doing your wireframes, and just like figure out a layout that works for you. And don't be afraid to pull inspiration from those other points.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that idea, and I personally use it all the time. If I'm I'm not an idea person. Like I'm not super creative. I don't have like an amazing idea for a website that looks, incredible and has the perfect UX. So I rely on exactly what Matt's saying. I rely on going to very popular sites and seeing how they approach UX, how they approach UI, what they do. Now, I don't go, like Matt said, I don't go and copy and paste anything. I go and I apply that knowledge to a similar project, to a similar use case. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Sometimes I'll tweak it a little bit more, like it'll be completely different, but I'll use the inspiration that they gave me to kind of go from there. That's how I do design work, especially, and any sort of UX. I very much rely on kind of standing on the shoulders of giants, and using their knowledge and applying it as much as I can. Again, we've talked about this a few times, with knowledge that you don't have. Sometimes outsourcing is a great idea as well. So like if you have a larger company and you have a larger project, if you're not the greatest UX UI designer, it might be a better idea to go and hire someone that's better at it than you, and you do the stuff that you're good at, like setting up the servers and setting up the the business logic on the front end and tie it into the business logic on the back end. That's also kind of a little bit of advice there too, but it's maybe not for the beginner web developers, but it kind of ties into like stand on the people that know better than you and know when to say I don't know as well.
Yeah, that's a really good kind of capstone to that. I think to all 10 tips is when it comes to the UI, UX, and even the actual coding itself. If you don't be afraid to look for a mentor, even if they're not a mentor in terms of like they talk to you and that type of thing, but look toward the guy who is doing better than you. Maybe he's in an open source project who's doing better than you because he has more experience. Don't be afraid to pull ideas from them, take ideas from them, and say, I don't know how to do this. I need help with this. I need to look this up. Blah 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 blah. Kind of know your place, like that. I know that has a negative connotation, but like yourself, like don't be put in your place by somebody else, but put yourself in place. You say, I am at this stage, I know this much about databases. I'm at this stage, I know this much about UI. And so I know I need help with this. I need to improve with this. I need to do this to get better. And that's kind of where you should put yourself in your own place and know when you need help. So with that being said, we got a web news here. So I'm going to go read through that, our recurring segment, and we'll have, I'm sure, an interesting conversation. So it's about smartphones again this time, and it's entitled Brand New Flagship Phones. Hopefully my throat gets through this. Now, purchasing a brand new flagship phone is rather expensive. So expensive now that in most cases, the carrier's quote-unquote loan program does not cover the majority of the price. Lower tier phones are getting better in terms of everyday use, as phones overall plateau in performance and excitement from the market. Some people always feel, however, that they need to purchase the flagship phone, even if it's not the newest, due to it being more premium. So, here's my questions. Would you buy a flagship phone brand new, or would you buy it later in its life, or at all, for that matter? Should you purchase the most expensive phone in a series, so for example, the recently announced Note 10, Samsung Galaxy Note 10, or should you always purchase that older one, so that previous generation, so you'd get the Note 9 in this case? Or another question rather, if you purchase an older or cheaper phone, is the turnaround for you more often? So for example, if you purchase a cheap phone once a year, or you would be purchasing a cheap phone once a year versus, let's say, you buy a real expensive phone and you keep it for 2, 3, 4, whatever years. So Mike, take it away.
It's a good, like there's a lot to unpack there. One thing that I want to point out real quick is that these loan programs and stuff like that, that's more of a Canadian thing than a US market thing. And I know a lot of our audience is in US and Europe and all that. And you guys have great subsidy services where you can sign up for a relatively inexpensive plan and still get, as long as you sign a 3-year contract, still get a really good price on even like a high-end flagship phone. But I think those prices are still going up regardless. So I think it's still, the argument still works, because phones now are, instead of being, 3-4 years ago, they were about $700 to $800 in the high range. They're now anywhere between $1,000 to $2,000 in the high range, which is like a huge increase. So I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, everyone, that your subsidies are going, like you have to pay more upfront for those massive flagship phones like the iPhone XS Max and like the Galaxy Note 10 and the Pixel 3 and stuff. I'm assuming that those prices have gone up for you as well. Maybe not as much as for us personally, because like I said before, I was used to paying like $300 for a phone with a subsidy, and now we're at the point where we're paying over $1,000 for a phone with a subsidy, and then paying also like around $100 a month, or even more. So like it's gone to a crazy level, and that's why kind of Matt's brought it up at this point. Okay, so with that being said,
I have some prices here as well, just so we can reference them as well.
I
pulled up a couple.
Fire those off before I go into it.
Okay, so these are Canadian prices pulled from Canadian carriers, and I'm reading the site verbatim. Is that the right word? Verbatim?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah,
I don't think I've ever actually said that.
It means you're reading it 1-to-1.
Okay, I've never actually said that. That was crazy. It just like rolled off the tongue. Anyway, moving on. Working on my meeting skills. So Samsung Galaxy Note 10 Plus from Rogers. This is the 256 gigabyte model, and it's also the Aura Glow color. This is a pre-order. It is $0 down, okay, and the monthly device cost is $60.83 per month for 24 months. And then it says taxes up front with Edge financing and 0% APR. Full price is $1,460. So that's actually...
It's surprisingly better than I thought it was. But what's the plan? What's the minimum plan you can get, like a reasonable plan you can get with that phone? That's my question. Find that out. While you're doing that, though, I'm going to tell you if I would buy a new flagship phone right now. And my answer to that is no. For me personally, I do value my phone a lot. I use it quite a bit, and I understand it's a very important part of my business day-to-day life. But the fact that there's so many good like mid/high range phones out there, like the OnePlus 7T Pro, like the Asus 6Z, like some Xiaomi phones, like there's some really nice Xiaomi phones that have very good specs for the price and have great screens now and stuff like have very good everything. They're all around great phones that are in the realm of around anywhere between $600 Canadian to about $800 Canadian, in that range. And that's without a contract, without anything. So what that means is that right now Matt's going to find a price for the contract. My current contract is in the $50 range for about 6 gigabytes of data. That's a decent contract in Canada. As far as I know, like I've called around a lot. That's a really good contract. I can't get that if I were to buy a new phone and I were to subsidize it. So I would have to pay a full price for that phone. To pay that $50 a month, I would have to pay the $1,400 like Matt was saying, plus the tax to be able to use the contract that I currently have. So that's why I wouldn't purchase a brand new phone right now. Because I can't justify paying that much when there's good alternatives available. Now Matt's making some crazy faces right now, so I want to hear the pricing on these contracts.
I'm shocked at the moment. Okay, so Now we have to remember here that this is a plan in which a Galaxy Note 10 Plus. Okay, to be clear,
Galaxy Note 10 Plus is top of the line.
So this is okay. So there's different types of plans. So I'm not going to go through every type, but there's basically this thing. I'm not with Rogers, so anyway. There's different types of plans, and there's Edge. They're called Edge. So there's Edge financing, which is the one we have chosen. Then there's Edge 40 tab, Edge 30 tab, Edge 20 tab, and no tab. So for example, I'm just going to quickly, I'm not going to read everything out. So if I quickly switch it from Edge financing, which is what we're on, to Edge 40 tab, now the phone is no longer $0. It's now $490. And the plans start at $115 a month.
Oh my God.
Which is, now, hang on a minute. These are infinite plans. These are Rogers infinite plans. Now, there's a bunch of options here. We haven't flipped through them all. Again, please do your own research. But just having clicked literally Edge 40 tab, I'm seeing, without touching anything else, $490 on a 2-year term. $490 on a 2-year term. This includes unlimited Canada-wide calling. It includes unlimited text, and it also includes unlimited shared data. There are 3 plans below that, and they are 10 gigabytes, 20 gigabytes, and 50. The 10 gigabytes is obviously the cheapest. That is $115 per month. All shared plans also get Roam like home.
So 115 or 150?
115. 115. Yes, 115
okay,
Canadian.
So then that plan, 115
which
for 10 gigs.
That $490 needs to be paid up front, as far as I understand it.
Yeah, it has to be paid upfront. Yeah. Okay. So what about the most expensive one with a $0?
Okay, so let's say it's $0. So now we're back on Edge financing, to be clear. So we have $0 down at a full price of $1,460. We have selected the Edge financing, which is $0 down payment and 0% APR, which is $60.83 per month for 24 months. All Rogers Infinite plans include unlimited. Now, hang on a minute here. There's two options here. So I have selected under the talk. I have selected unlimited Canada-wide calling. Under text, it says unlimited. And under data, it says unlimited shared data. There's 3 plans for me to choose from. Again, 10, 20, and 50. The 10 gigabyte plan is $75 a month. Now, you might think, oh, that's really great. However, we got to remember here that we're doing a flex finance of $60.83.
Yeah.
So, and again, all shared plans get Roam Like Home. So, I just want to make sure everyone knows what we're reading here, because I don't want to.
So essentially, you're paying 175 plus 68.
Yeah, so that's what I'm doing. So 70. Oh, and I just almost hung up the call on you for pressing the wrong button, and it still doesn't working. Okay.
So around $150 with all the taxes. It'll be around $160 a month with all the taxes.
So typed in as it's shown on the website. Whether or not there's taxes and stuff like that, I'm not entirely sure.
There is on top.
Okay, one sec. Let me actually select the 10 gigabyte plan here. Let's just do this live.
Yeah.
I clicked it and nothing happened. Okay, there we go. So it says it's $75, and it says that it's $135.83 a month.
Okay. That's with the subsidy? That's with the monthly cost?
That's with the monthly cost, not including taxes. It says plus applicable taxes on both the phone and the line fee. So,
sure.
Yeah. Whatever the heck it is.
Okay,
but anyway,
so that's interesting. That's an interesting.
And you got to remember, this is our new. I know Americans probably are like, why don't you just have unlimited data? Yeah, well, we don't do that here in Canada. We charge for every single thing we do, and our currency is worth less. So remember, CAD stands for Clown Association Dollars. That's a joke. It's actually Canadian dollars. Let's calm down. But Clown Association Dollars. Now.
Yep.
That's that. Now,
that's that.
Now, do you want me to read from so in Canada, we have large companies like Rogers. Those are the big boys. And the big boys own smaller guys. And those smaller guys are generally cheaper. I have Koodo pricing right in front of me.
I mean, yeah, you can do that if you want. Sure.
Okay. So Koodo is on various tabs. So a tab is like a loan you get. And so it's like, you get this loan. Depending on how much loan you get, you have to choose plans within a certain range, okay? And then you also pay per month. So I'll give an example. So for example, there's a tab here. It's the biggest tab they have that's listed here, and this is a pre-order of the Samsung Galaxy Note 10 Plus. You get free Galaxy Buds, which I don't know whether the Rogers one comes with it. It probably does, but I didn't see that.
I think it does, yeah.
I didn't see that, but anyway, it doesn't matter. It probably does. But this one comes with free Galaxy Buds. It is the Aura Black color, and it is $500 up front, okay, with $40 a month being charged for 24 months, and you have to choose a plan that costs at least $75 a month.
Yeah.
That is their biggest tab.
It's worse. It's a worse deal than the Rogers one, from what I can see.
And also, the full retail price apparently is $1,725.
Yeah, it's just arbitrary. They're just choosing arbitrary numbers. So in my opinion, like with all that broken down, essentially what we have is buy the phone with cheaper. Rogers is $0, which is interesting to me, and pay $150 a month. So that's, or buy a cheaper phone and pay $50 a month, around $50. That's how much I'm paying. It's a weird conundrum in my eyes. Like it's a tough one to crack, because on the one hand, putting up front cost, like paying $800 up front, is kind of a steep ask, even for like a solid mid-range to high-range phone. But then there's also that back cost, like having to pay monthly scares me for some reason.
Well, I think interestingly, one of the questions I think we need to ask with that is whether or not you're okay with a higher monthly cost just in general. So, for example, one of the reasons why I went to Kudo, because that's my carrier, is that I like the fact that I have a lower monthly cost. I like the fact that I can just leave, like it's not a contract and that type of thing. And then when I leave, the only thing I really have to do is pay out the rest of like the loan or the tab, as they call it, and then I can kind of leave. And I think that one of the questions we have to ask ourselves is, do we want to be stuck in something where, let's say something happens to our income? Do we really want to be like, oh my God, can I afford my phone bill? You know, at the end of the day here, you're only refreshing your phone, you know, let's say on average every 2 years, but you could stretch it, you know, if you had an income problem. And I think one of the things is that I wonder whether we should be thinking of, let's separate carrier from phone and let's go with buying the phone and then going with the carrier. Now, with that being said, if there's a really good deal where the carrier is willing to like subsidize a fair bit and that type of thing, I'm not saying go against that. However, one of the things that I was messaging you about earlier today was the fact that the actual Samsung website, so we'll just use the Note 10 Plus since it's trendy, and I was thinking about picking it up, is that the Note 10 Plus does have a financing plan from Samsung themselves, and it's up to a 12-month term and 0% and all the rest of it, and it comes with free Galaxy Buds as a promo. And so one of the things I was thinking was maybe I should be doing that, where I can then approach Kudo, because like that's just part of the deal. So if you bring your own phone, you can actually get a cheaper plan. And so what I would be doing then is looking at the phone as a purchase and not a part of the plan. Because we all know that like the actual service we get from our carriers is what we really want to pay for per month, right? And we just associate the phones being with the carrier. Like we just associate them being together, where it's like when I go to change my plan, I get another phone. Like some people do that, right? Every year, every 2 years, whatever. And so I think what we maybe need to do to get a better thing is let's get a lower monthly cost and let's think of the phone as a purchase. Like a lot of people aren't going to think of like purchasing an everyday item as like, oh, now I need to enter a 2-year term. Like a lot of people are not going to think that way. A lot of people are going to say, well, you know, I'll either save up or I'll just buy it or I'll like, you know, do whatever. But they will generally not finance it, especially when we're talking about, yes, this is $1,500 or up to $1,500, but it is only $1,500. You know, there's a lot of things that are way more expensive, cars and that type of thing. And so I think that maybe we need to start looking at it as, let's try to stay away, in my opinion, from financing unless it's a good deal. And so what I would do is like maybe make a half decent down payment. Like I haven't contacted Samsung, so I don't know how like flexible the plan is or whatever. But like if I could, what I would do is maybe go to Samsung, be like, okay, I'm going to pay you $400 and I'll finance the rest so that my monthly cost ain't too much. And now I'm keeping my phone plan completely separate. And so now I've made a phone purchase and I'm just like paying for the service. It's the same thing as like I need a phone. It's literally the same thing as I have YouTube Premium, but I need a device to use it. I didn't go to YouTube Premium to buy a video watching device. You know, I have an iPad, a phone, a computer, so I can use my YouTube Premium.
Yeah. And I'll probably I agree with a couple things. So I agree that we should separate the phone from the carrier. That's how I feel, and that's how I've done it for the past, I think I'd say the past 4 or 5 years. That's how I've been doing it. Before I did it where I bought a phone on contract and I subsidized it by the carrier. Now, for the last 5 years, I've been buying phones completely separate from the carrier. Like not even from the carrier at all. And that's been working for me. I think peace of mind wise, like you said, I'm paying a low monthly fee. If anything were to happen with work, I could still afford that fee because it's not that much. I think you're right in saying that, where like if you pay how much you can afford for the phone currently. Right now. So if you're doing well and you can afford $1,500, pay the $1,500. That's your, it's your right. Like if you like the phone, there's nothing wrong with you spending that much money on it. For me, that's an obscene amount of money to spend on a phone at this point. I can definitely like, if I were to be making like an X amount more money and stuff like that, maybe it would change. But like that I think it's a personal thing, and it might not even be directly related to your income. It might be related to like a psyche of like, I don't value a phone as much. Maybe you should value it more. I don't know. But for me, it's like the last phone I bought was the Asus 5Z. It was, I think, $500 all in I got it on eBay. It was a good deal and it's been working just perfectly fine for me. And it's like, I don't have any issue with using it for another year as long as it doesn't break, essentially. That's how I feel about it. Like Matt said, every 2 years is usually when I kind of go around for switching phones. I have done a little bit longer before, like 2.5, but essentially usually it's around every 2 years. I plan on keeping that because I do like to stay up to date with technology. I know I could for sure use the phone for longer, but I'm kind of one of those people that like to stay up to date with technology. So 2 years is a good mark for me. So probably in a year from now, I'll be looking at another mid-range, price to performance champ kind of phone, maybe a OnePlus, maybe an Asus, or maybe a Xiaomi phone, depending on what the offering is. But I'm probably not going to go with the top of the line. As much as I want like that amazing screen that the Galaxy has, I think that's like the things that you're going to sacrifice are going to be those like extremely premium things, right? Like the screen, the features that I don't even know what other. I guess the pen would be one that the Galaxy has that no other phone would have, and you're paying premiums for that. So I'm willing to sacrifice those couple of features to get a solid device that I can pay up front and I don't feel bad about it, because like during my own mental gymnastics, I feel okay spending the $500, and then as soon as it goes above like $800, I'm like, oh my God, I can't do this anymore. I guess I think that's a personal preference kind of thing, and that's where I fall on the spectrum, and I don't know. I think everyone's going to be different on that spectrum with personal preference, their current like income and stuff like that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that it is sort of like really hinging on the fact that what you value. Like to me, I think of it as, so obviously I have like nice computers and nice things like that, and the way I always have kind of looked at it is we are in the tech game, so our luxury items are the tech. Like I'm not running around in like Gucci suits and stuff like that. I don't have like all these designer clothes and that type of thing. I don't have like a super nice car. I drive a 15-year-old car. I don't like that. This is sort of like my luxury item, I guess, is sort of thing or my luxury item set, where it's like I have a nice screen. I have like a few computers, and like I have a brand new laptop, that type of thing. Like that's sort of like our thing. And so like you for example, you may value other things differently. Maybe you like to travel more than me, for sure. Like Yep. You travel way more than me. So obviously like one of your trips is going to be like a quarter sometimes of this phone, depending on how crazy the trip is. You know what I mean? Like if you,
for sure.
You know what I mean? It'd be 25%. This phone would be 25% of your trip cost. Whereas me, I'm just like, oh, I'm not going to go anywhere. I'll just buy this phone kind of thing. Yeah. It's another thing too, where I had a really weird path where I was on BlackBerries for a really long time, stuck there until literally there was no Facebook app, and then jumped to an LG G4, which was fine, but performed terribly. Like months later, just a terrible performance. It ate battery. Whether or not I was supposed to erase it and this, that, the other thing, you can nitpick me. Again, hit me up on Twitter. I don't know what happened. I just used the damn thing. I had a really massive battery that I had bought for it because it was ripping through battery like crazy. Terrible performance on Pokemon Go and stuff. Just bad. Like I personally had a bad experience. That's all I'm just trying to say. But the phone was fine. Like it take good pictures and stuff. I'm not trying to ditch anyone. But anyway, regardless of which, I needed to leave that experience because I was just beating the hell out of that thing. I was just using it too much. Jumped to an S8 Plus, used the hell out of that. I got a Key 2 in front of me. I won that. I have a BlackBerry Key 2 in front of me, and I use that every day for all my social media, all my stuff like that, because I can rip on that keyboard like a crazy, crazy. So I just like phones, I think, at this point. Is like, I jump around a lot. I'm very opinionated on phones. You're kind of like, I use this thing as a tool. Me, I'm like, yeah, I use it as a tool, and I want the best. I want that screen. Because like when I saw the Galaxy S8 Plus, like it's no joke, when I took it home, I was like, Jesus Christ, they have screens like this? Like that was literally my experience. And same with the monitors. Like I've purchased a new monitor now because my other one was a disaster. The cable was broken. It was broken. It was a disaster. Total disaster. But the point is, now I have a really nice screen. And again, Jesus Christ, they have screens like this? Like... And so because I had such an upgrade and such a shock, now I'm like, oh, I want that S Pen. Ooh, I want to have the courage to dump that terrible, terrible headphone jack. And so
courage. You got to get that courage.
I got to have the courage and to get rid of that 100-year-old jack. Man, we've been using plugs and walls for probably over 100 years now. Like, how fucking disgusting is a cable and plugging something in? But anyway, just swearing it up right now too. But anyway, it doesn't matter. But point of the matter is, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, is to me, I value that more, I think. But I'm not going crazy. It's not like I'm buying a new, I'm still being reasonable. I'm looking for a deal. I'm waiting for the phone to age a bit and making sure that it works well and all that kind of stuff. I think about it first. I didn't just go like, oh, pre-order, that was it. I didn't just jump into it and stuff like that. And so, yeah, that I don't know. I think the reason why I'm hesitating is because it's so subjective. It's because it's like, okay, so I'll ask you a question, actually. I'll pose you a question now. So you bought that 5Z, right? Or 5Z, as we say in Canada. You bought that Asus 5Z. What? You said you need to turn it around next year, probably. So what's that? A year and a half? A year? What is that?
2 years. Exactly 2 years.
Now, would you say that you need to turn it around because it's acting like it's being bad? Like with my LG, it worked well for a year, and then it was just a disaster. Like
no, it's going to be purely a thing that I want a new phone. That's how it's going to be. I know for sure because this phone I think would be able to do 3, maybe 4 years with the performance that it has, without really suffering that badly. Right, like it's that good because it has the top of the line chipset. Like it's an 845 processor. It has 6 gigs of RAM. Like it has a nice screen. Like there's not much else you need. You know what I mean? It's not like it has a slower processor. It has everything top of the line. The camera is great. It keeps getting updates. Like I'm getting the next update. What is it? Android Q or something? Whatever it is. I'm getting Android Q. It's getting updates. Everything's fine. My thing is that I'm also like you. I like the new stuff, but I'll do it a little bit slower. Like we're just on different levels. Like if you want to replace your Note 8 Plus now with a Samsung 10, what is that? Like a year and a bit for your 8? Well,
no. So this is a S8. This is just an S8 Plus. So one of the things is I want to try the pen in that because I've never had a Note before. And I think it's 2 years, bang on almost exactly, because I remember that the Note comes out after the Galaxy, and I remember I purchased the Galaxy S8 Plus right as the Note 8 was coming out.
So it's the same thing for me then. Like after 2 years, I'll be buying another phone for the exact same reason that you're buying it.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I think maybe I've like gotten spoiled by Samsung now with the nice screen and stuff, so I'm just like, ooh, I gotta have this nice screen now, and I gotta have this pressure sensitive bottom and these touch gestures and the One UI and everything. Like I think I've maybe been spoiled a bit, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's $1,500. Like it's a fair bit of cash, but it's not gonna bankrupt me over a 2 year or more period. Because like I'm probably still gonna wait. Like I'm talking like I'm going to buy this today. I might not even purchase this. I might be like, I'll wait till the 11, and then maybe I'll even when the 11 comes out, I'll buy the 10. Like I might buy the 10 Plus. I don't know. I'll see. But if there's a really good deal, then maybe, and then that'll, because part of the fun is losing the headphone jack, as we all know. That's part of the fun. I use wired headphones every day, and part of the fun is going to be the fact that I now have to replace them with a $200 pair of headphones. Now, okay, I actually have a really brief question about this now. Okay, I'm on a wired. This is relating to the conversation though, so I'm going to relate it back. Just hang on a minute here. Hang on a minute, Your Honor. This is relevant to the case now. So I have this. I am currently wired into my computer via this 100-year-old headphone jack, 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. Now, that's fine. Hooray for our lives. The question is, I will sit here while I'm working and want to watch stuff. So I have an iPad mini original, the OG original iPad mini 1. I cleaned it up, got rid of all the accounts, all that crap, and I just put video apps on it now. Twitch, YouTube, the whole bit. And so I said, okay, now I'm going to have 2 monitors for my screen, for my computer, and I'm going to have this little monitor here. And so what I'll do is I'll wirelessly connect to it. I have two sets of wireless headphones. I have a Sony set, and they're not cheap. These are good freaking headphones. I have a wireless set of Sony's, and I also have a wireless set of Jaybirds, okay? Because I'm sitting here for so long, doing the work and that type of thing, and just having this, background noise on, I rip, and I'm serious, I rip through that battery. Now, I could use this disgusting 100-year-old technology, but my question is, people say, oh, the wireless is so much better. But there's people who are music nuts out there that would listen to music, I would assume, longer than I sit here to work. And I rip through the first set of batteries, and then sometimes I gotta go and get the Jaybirds. So I pop off the Sonys, put them on the charger, grab the Jaybirds, put the Jaybirds in, connect to them, listen to that, Jaybird, and if it's a really heavy day, it's like the Jaybirds are done. Take the Jaybirds out, put them on the table, or put them on the charger, grab the other one off the charger, put the Sonys on. Like, that's what has to happen. Now, if I were to say do this, I'm going to have Galaxy Buds as well, and I ordered freaking Xiaomi ones. But the question is like, people are like, oh, the AirPods and everything else are so great. But that battery life is a serious freaking problem, isn't it? Like, does no one see that being a problem? I want to sit here and watch YouTube, because it's literally background noise. I want to watch YouTube for like 9 hours. People are like, oh, that's a 6-hour talk time on that headset you got there. That's pretty good. I'm here for 9 hours.
So it is a problem, and I don't think everyone is on board with the headphone jack being off. I think people are just accepting it and approving of it or whatever. But most people, if they were to be asked, would you want the headphone jack to be back? Most people, I think, would say yes. Because there's no benefit of taking it out, realistically. Like, actually, physically, everything about it, like, it's just a pure money play, right? Just to get people to buy more expensive headphones. That's all it is, period. There's no other, like, no person ever could explain it to me otherwise. It's 100,000% a money grab. Fair enough. We're pawns in this thing. It's fine. I'll deal with it. Like, there's nothing we can do. We just got to accept it. It's adapting. So I think for 100%, people are still not fully okay with it. They're just accepting of it. There's some people that like the convenience of Bluetooth headphones, and I'll agree. I have a pair of Bluetooth headphones that like the Galaxy Airbuds. They're the Xiaomi Air Dots,
which I ordered as well.
Which you ordered as well, and they're fantastic. Like, they're great for what they are, but they're not what you're saying. Like, they're not good for you sitting down and watching YouTube for an hour or two. They're good for you getting up and taking a phone call. They're good for you going for a walk around the block and listening. They're good for you mowing the lawn for like half an hour, 40 minutes. They're good for you going out to the subway and listening to music while you're, traveling to work. They're good for that. They're amazing for that. But there's a very specific reason why the MacBook still has a headphone jack.
Which is disgusting, by the way.
Which is disgusting. But like you said, people that need audio quality, like people that are editing video, Bluetooth hasn't caught up with audio quality yet. It's not even close.
No, and it does cut out what people, like, despite what people say, it does. Yeah. Sometimes I'll be like, what the hell is that noise? And it'll like beep and then it'll shut off.
For sure. There's still issues with it. Like in a large city like New York, there's still issues with AirPods because there's just so much interference going around you.
Oh my
so you're
God,
walking in New York, you can't. Yeah, like it's actually still a problem. But that's why MacBooks still have the headphone jack, because you're sitting down, you're working for 8 hours, and then you need to listen to something. Like, they don't have the battery technology yet to provide that. So they're still going to keep giving the headphone jack until they work that out, or until they're close, until they have like AirPods can do, 8 hours or 7 hours of battery life, 6 hours even. They'll do that. Then they'll take the headphone jack out, or like the audio quality would become closer and closer. They will for sure remove it, but that's the issue. Like, you're 100% right with the performance. Now, I have decent Bluetooth headphones that last me around 8 hours, so I don't have that problem too much. But I hate having to charge all of my devices all the time. So I'm with you on the fact that I need a cord. Like, my favorite headset does have a cord. Most of my headphones are corded, except for like I said, those Air Dots, which are great for convenience. That's where I stand on the whole thing. I don't like the fact that headphone jacks are going away, but I'm not going to be sitting here and saying like I'm going to protest or anything. Like, it's not up to me. It's up to the people trying to make money, and they lead the way, right? Like, we can't do anything about it.
Well, like one other thing I was told too is just like you just use the adapter. So if we bring it back to this, where it's like the Note 10 Plus, if people like just use the adapter, and they say, well, you just leave the adapter. So like the headphone to USB-C, they're like, oh, leave the adapter on your headphones. But I'm like, what if I need to charge my phone? You gotta remember here, these phones are freaking pumping out a hell of a lot of pixels. They don't exactly last forever.
Yeah, and so I don't think that's a valid argument. Like,
that's what I always said. It's like if I'm having trouble with battery life in general, and also actually talking about that charging thing. Let's hypothetically say I got the Note 10 Plus. Get the Note 10 Plus, that's USB-C. All right, hooray. Now I have a special dongle that needs to charge the Jaybirds, which plugs into micro USB, and then my Sony's plug into micro USB. Now, admittedly, yes, each one of them is a couple of years old, so you could make that argument like, well, those are old, buy new ones. Yeah, thank you very much for that. But the thing is like, I can, but I don't want to keep charging everything. Like, this is getting freaking crazy now. Like, this is, I mean, a charging pad, of course. Oh, bumping my microphone. A charging pad, of course, fixes this whole thing. But, like, we're pushing tech forward before it's ready now. It's like people were like, well, the old MacBooks or the old Macs they took out the CD drive. It's like, but I didn't notice it, and I was in tech because I didn't care because I was getting away from CDs anyway. So, like, I think they did it probably at the appropriate time. Of course, there's going to be some people that are having trouble with the transition. But this is like, hey guys, we haven't worked on our batteries. What the heck's going on here? Because I would love, seriously, to have like my Jaybirds or have something, and I'm like, this might sound crazy. I would love to have something actually implanted in my ear. Like, I'm serious now. And just have it so that I just have my audio from my phone and go into my head at all times. Seriously. And then I just have that. I don't know how the heck it would charge. But yes, wireless is the future. But the future is not now.
Yeah.
So
agreed.
I know that's off topic but related, even though I lied. I just lied to the judge here. But but I mean, I thought it would come back more toward the topic, but it ended up going further and turning it into batteries and all this. Actually, there's one final question because this episode's getting long. With that 5Z, because it has less flashy features like the screen and such, are you sacrificing battery life, or how is that going? How's that going, basically?
No, battery life is great. Battery life, honestly, it's like I hardly ever have an issue with lasting a day. Sometimes if I'm using it normally, I'll last like a day and a half even. The battery life is perfectly fine. The thing where it sacrifices are the screen is an AMOLED.
Tell me you don't have an infinity display?
Yeah, I don't have an infinity display. I think that's the only thing where I would say like, oh, okay, it's a little bit of a sacrifice.
Interesting.
That's it.
Okay.
Everything else is great. Like I have no complaints about the phone. And even then, having said that, the screen is perfectly fine.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. So, all right. Well, there's another point for the non-flagship brand new phones. And realistically, I know we didn't touch on it much, but realistically, you could really just buy a 1-gen back, and it wouldn't be that bad. Considering you're buying a lower tier phone and using it for 2 years, you could buy a flagship phone that's a year old for less. Use that for 2 years because you were on cutting edge before, now you're on the edge, and then you're over. You know what I mean? So yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I think that concludes this episode. Unless you have something else, I don't have my show notes because my computer blue screen in the middle of this. I just realized. So
no, it's all good.
So, Mike, do you want to do the conclusion for the first time ever?
Oh, my. Okay.
Guinness World
all right,
Records?
I'll do it. Thanks for listening, and make sure you don't miss an episode by subscribing on your platform of choice. You can follow us on any of our socials. It's HTML, all the things, Facebook and Instagram, HTML everything on Twitter. We're on Medium, we're on GitHub. You can check us out on Patreon and help us boost our community. we could find us there at patreon.com/HTML all the things. And there's plenty of tiers, or there's actually only 2 tiers.
There's only 2 tiers. Come on now.
Definitely only a couple. But thank you to our Patreons currently, which is Sean from RabbitWorks JavaScript, and that's works with a WERKS. You can check him out on YouTube at youtube.com/RabbitWorksJavaScript. There's Garrick from Local Path Computing and Web Design. That's localpathcomputing.com. There's Craig, aka Cosworth, and there's Ryan Gatchell from Blue Black Digital, blueblackdigital.com. So feel free to leave us a comment or review on any of the platforms that you're listening to this on, and we are signing off.
Oh yeah.
Christ.